Welcome to the Freelance Drive. Here we talk with skilled freelancers about their professional journey. Stay tuned for real-life experiences to learn and actionable steps to take to improve your freelancing career. My name is Yuri. I'm a community builder at Code Control and 9am.works, and my guest is Mike Bal, a freelance product leader with 10 plus years of experience driving growth and success for startup and enterprise businesses. And today we'll talk about picking the right clients and knowing when to fire the wrong ones. So welcome, Mike.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Super happy to talk to you. And tell me, how do you know who the right clients are for you?
Yeah, I think so. This one, and the reason I kind of stood up and volunteered for this one is because on the other side of it, very obviously when you're working with the wrong clients. There's too much tension. They're asking for the wrong things. They don't understand the value of what you're delivering. And you feel that every single day when you're talking to them, or you dread talking to them or working through it or showing them anything, right? Like whether you're a designer, developer, or anything, there's this dread that comes when you get yourself in kind of a contract with somebody that's not a good fit. And generally you have that pressure of like, well, I need the money, I need the work, whatever, I'm going to push through and do it. Not everything's going to be perfect. But I think when you're finding the right clients, it's really about like, if you take kind of the product growth approach to it, is like, look at your top customers. Figure out what they are happiest with, right? The Sean Ellis score is a good one where you ask like, hey, if this disappeared, this feature, this product disappeared tomorrow, how disappointed would you be? How much would you miss it? And so if you are thinking about your customer list or client list, or even just the projects that you've worked on in your career, if you haven't been doing this for long, like what are the things that went really well? What are you best at? What did you feel really good about delivering? And then being able to say like, who was on the other end of that, whether it be a manager or a client? What did I like about working with them, right? And I think when you're talking to people early on, you have the project fit, like, is it something I can do? Is it something I'm good at doing? Is there budget in my range of what I need to be able to justify doing this kind of thing? And then you can kind of get the vibe of like who they are and how they're thinking about it. Like read their anxiety levels. Are they going to be micromanagers, or do they understand enough for you to be able to work back and forth with them? Or are you going to have to handhold the whole time? So it's really a people reading exercise, but instead of you being so focused on trying to get a deal, it's really kind of like a first date is how I think about it, right? Like, are we vibing? Do we have good chemistry here? Like, does this feel right? Does it feel reasonable? Or is it in the spectrum between neutral and good versus like awkward, right? And terrible?
I feel like when freelancer get question if what will happen if your client will disappear tomorrow, they will answer like, yeah, shit, I'll have less money. So what's in it for you personally, except for money in a good project?
Yeah, I mean, I think, and I didn't start working this way, but I learned this about myself early on in my career of if I'm working on something that doesn't have an impact, it doesn't result in something, right? I end up feeling like I'm wasting my time. Like I have 4 kids. I have a lot of things I could be doing and should be doing. I have other people I could be talking to, right? So it's one of these things of like, if I want to prioritize my own time, even if I'm getting like, yes, I have to get paid and I have to make X amount of money, like set that aside. To really do my best work on a project, I know that I have to like, believe that it's going to work and that the outcome is going to be there and be somewhat interested and excited about it, right? So if I don't have those 2 things, then there's no way I could work with a difficult client. But having a good client that's a good fit on top of that is kind of like let's say the Holy Trinity in a case, right? Like it's a good project for my skills. I'm excited about what they're doing and I believe it's going to work. And I like working with this person, or I think I like at least engaging with this person up front. That's kind of how I look at like what's worth my time. And if at any point in time, those things start to shift or I can't answer yes, either me or my wife will be like, no, we have too many other things to do.
Oh, so basically you have a support system. You have your wife.
Yeah. And the trade-off, right? She's the therapist, so she could always see more clients. So it's like, well, if that's not worth your time, I can take more clients. Like she's got a list of people waiting and you could just help more with the kids or something. So it's one of those, like we're partners in everything, right? But it's, I have a gut check on that end of like, and she's the first person that always tell me like, you undervalue yourself. Like, don't take this crappy deal. They're going to try to own, like, they want to own your schedule for X hours a day from this time to this time. They want you on 10 calls every week, whatever. Like, that's too much. That's not why that's not why you do this, right? You want the freedom. You want some flexibility. You want to have control over your day and what you work on. So I think those things are important to remember. So you don't just end up in this place where you're chasing and like compromising on everything you value.
So as you've mentioned, it's easier to understand when the client is not good, when it's bad, when it's hard to work with. But how do you do an initial evaluation of a client to ensure that they are still good to work with?
Yeah, so I basically take my values that I mentioned and break them into questions up front. So I'll ask them kind of hard questions, almost like a reverse interview, right? Like, how valuable is this project to your business? Or what is the driving force behind it? Who wants it done? Why do they want it done, right? Like, what does that mean to you? Sometimes it's like, if we don't get off this platform, we have a big contract that we have to renew and we don't want to do that. Sometimes it's like, hey, we really believe in this. We're missing the skills we need. We need this to get our team on track and be successful. And sometimes it's like, nobody on our team wants this. We don't have the in-house expertise. We're focused on other stuff. It's something that needs to get done. And so you kind of have to like feel through, but you really have to push them. And that's kind of my approach to it, is usually I'm interviewing you now, right? Like, what is this project? Why do you need help with it? How important is it? Is it valuable to you? What are the constraints you have around it? Is anybody going to be involved, right? Because like, if I hit the ground running and in 1 week I can't get anybody's approval or input on something, and I just sit there, like, it's not only annoying for me to have done that, but like, at some point, if they're not going to follow through, they're more likely to not pay an invoice. They're more likely to table the project and things like that. So I just like to stay out of those scenarios.
It also sounds to me that you are kind of making your client acquisition funnel really, really harder for clients to go through it. And but definitely it's all about, right, choosing the right client. So I'm curious, how is your client acquisition funnel looks like?
Yeah, and I'm pretty stringent on this part now because I think my big takeaway has been I lose a lot more time, energy, money if I take on a bad project and spend a month or two on it and then end up not getting paid much or hardly at all, right? Like, if I spend 4 times what I should working on that thing and it's half of what I would normally charge for it or something like that, and that prevented me from getting 2 deals that were good, it's a huge cost to me in the overall grand scheme of things. So I've just essentially, my funnel is like, right now I don't even advertise what I'm doing. I have a couple of things that I'm working on. I have some bigger things in the background. Every now and then I'll put up a post. I mostly just talk to people. And when I'm talking to people, if an opportunity comes up, it is like, hey, I think I could help you with this. And that's beyond like me hopping on a quick 30-minute call and walking you through it, right? Like, it's kind of a mini project. And if they're interested at that point, then it's kind of like, okay, here's kind of the range of what I think it would take me from an effort standpoint. And this is the thing I would give you. This is the price range, right? And then if they're still like, I kind of make them pursue a little bit to show that they're really interested, because that'll eliminate if it's like, somebody comes to you with a fleeting idea they want to move, but they don't have budget for, or somebody
Mhm.
comes to you with something they have to solve right now. So I kind of filter that by making them chase a little bit, like, hey, I'm willing to help you a little bit. And usually I take this strategy of making it feel like I'm giving them more work if they don't use me. It's like, here's the thing you're trying to do. Here's how you would probably approach that. Here are these things that you need to grasp or wrap your head around. And it's either one of the things they're going to say, like, oh, yeah, I'm super excited about this. Like, I have somebody on my team learning it right now, and they're going to run with it. They're going to look at it and go, I don't have time to learn all this. Like, I'm just going to hire you to do it. Or they're going to look at it and be like, it's not that important. We're going to table this for later, kind of thing. So that's another like filter in this step. Almost always my first, like, if it's not LinkedIn or email or introductions, I just hop on a quick call, 30 minutes or something like that. Just say, like, what are you working on? Can I help you with anything? And that's genuinely my mindset. Is not like, is this a new deal? It's, can I help them? And
Mm.
that ends up adding value and eventually comes back one way or the other, because you're either proving that you know what you're doing and that you can help with that kind of thing, because they are more than likely talking to other people who are working on that kind of thing, right? Like, they're researching, they're reaching out in communities, they're talking to their peers. So you're kind of proving that you're an expert there and you know how to move it forward. And then you're also finding an opening to say, like, yeah, I have a new connection. They can either advocate for me, or this is a project that might materialize in 3, 6, 9 months or whatever.
It's easier to choose clients when you have them waiting for you. Kind of like if you have 4 or 5 applications and you kind of can choose who to work with. But sometimes it happens that freelancers doesn't have who to choose from, and there is one client coming in, and then like, um, yeah, it's kind of shitty client, but if I want to work with them now, maybe I will never work with another client again. So how to deal with this feeling that if it's not a good fit, if you feel that it's not a good fit, you are still rejecting this client instead of like, I will take it anyway because it's money.
Yeah, and I'll say I don't have a list of, at least I don't have a CRM with a list of projects in the queue that I'm ready to like pick off, right? I have people that I talk to periodically, and I do just go after these conversations, whether it's in communities, online, whatever, different projects, repos, whatever's happening that I'm interested at the time. And I think one is following your interests will get you to better projects. So if you're big in AI or you're looking at something specific or there's a design trend or group or whatever that you're in and you find, then you're going to find other people looking for that same thing. So that's kind of where you open these opportunities. I think the other piece of like turning a client away. So you talk to somebody, you start getting bad signals. They don't kind of align with what you value in working with them or whatever. I try to make a point of like, let me see if I can connect you with somebody who might be able to solve this for you. Because you always look good in doing that. And that's also what feeds the community of freelancers and talented people, right? Is like, I would hope that somebody else would do the same thing for me. And they do, right? Like they talk to somebody like, I don't know what they were talking about. They mentioned a product, they mentioned AI, whatever. I knew it was you. I'm going to make the intro. I hope that if I'm doing that, other people are doing that, and it just kind of feeds the cycle, right? So like, and the nicest way to let somebody down is be like, hey, I can't solve your problem, but here's somebody or here's a few people who might be able to help you out. That way they're not starting from scratch.
Which means that you have to have a good network. So how do you
Yeah.
build your network?
So I've worked with, it's been a combination. I've worked in agencies, I've worked in house, and I've worked with a lot of people over the years. And I've led big teams and lots of different teams cross functional. So I have kind of my favorites, right, in that group. And
Mm.
sometimes they're at companies like Disney and Google or whatever and don't have any time to take on new projects. And sometimes they end up in slumps and they need work. And sometimes they just decide to go their own path and they're pretty much always available. So I just kind of stay in touch. There's usually like alumni groups from companies I've been at. There's different communities, or I touch base with them fairly often. And then I'll go out when I'm like next week, I'll be at WordCamp US. I'll just talk to people, see what they're doing, see what they're up to, see what they're working on. And over time, that network kind of builds. I live in the middle of nowhere, Minnesota, so I don't drive up to the cities and go to a lot of events. But when I do, I usually coordinate and plan ahead of time and just kind of make sure I'm intentional with my time.
What red flags will immediately tell you not to work with a client?
Uh, Penny pinching. So if we're talking budget, right? If I throw a range out there, and I usually don't start with an exact number, I start with a range. Like here's depending on where we go, and here's what I don't know yet. You know, this early in working with you, it's probably going to be in this range. If they're like, nah, I was thinking half that or something, or they're like, then I know, right? Like if they're trying to bring it down to a point where I can't add any value, and that's like I think I decided a while ago for any ongoing engagements or something like that, there's X dollars a month just to have my headspace on it on a consistent basis. If it's not just a project based, like I go heads down, I knock this thing out, I move on. Like there's a certain amount of time and energy that just takes me to be involved and like put my brain into it. And if they're not willing to even consider that, it's a bad fit. The other thing is if they're asking you to do something that they don't really understand, right? So like I'll use AI as an example again, because a lot of people don't really understand it and they think it'll fix everything. It could be designing things too, like, oh, I need a really simple website and it needs to have this form or it needs to have 5 different forms. They need to go into my CRM. Like you find out these other things along the way. They're like, it's actually not a simple website. You want like e-commerce, you want lead gen, you know what I mean? Like there's all
Yeah.
these hidden things that are in there. And if they don't understand the project, you have to spend a lot more time on education and then you have to charge them for that. And there are
Yeah.
clients that are willing to pay for that if they acknowledge that they don't know, but most of them are not.
Most of them like, yeah, it's your personal thing. You just want to, you just like, spending your hours helping us to build our
Yeah.
business. Yeah, it
I have a
doesn't
no
work that.
asshole rule too. If I get the vibe that they're just an asshole, I'm like, if they're disrespectful, they're not paying attention, they're not engaged, if they're like, even if they're talking bad about their own team,
Mm.
you get these different signs of just like I kind of treat it how I would people in real life. Like I'm going to choose not to spend my time around assholes. But that's a good step one, I guess, in the process.
So it sounds like it's all about usual, normal human traits. So exactly how you find friends and talk to people. Like if you feel that they're excellent, maybe it's not the best friend. Huh.
Yeah. So I think about so where I'm at in the middle of nowhere, my closest neighbor is like I'd say a kilometer away, maybe two. He's a long driveway. But we help each other out, right? And this is how like communities built originally. People have different skills. They help each other, they trade, they work together, right? So I'm a big guy, younger guy. My old farmer neighbor, when it comes time to get hay up in his like big thing and he needs somebody to unload those big hay bales, he'll call me. He's like, I just need a little bit of help, but I can't do it. I'll break my back. I might fall. Like, can you help me with this? And when my tractor that I don't know how to use breaks, or something weird happens around here and I don't know what to do with, the property or the land or whatever, like he'll come look at it in an instant. He'll swing by in 2 minutes and it's not a problem. That same like human connection piece of like, I add value, you add value is the foundation for the economics in the entire business, right? It's
Yeah.
just like, but time is not free most of the time, right? Like there's a fair trade and then there's like a exchange of value. And in the case of like contracting and freelancing, usually the client is not adding a ton of value back to you, right? They need something, and so they're paying for it, and that's the value exchange. And
Yeah.
that's just kind of how you think about it, but it's still human fundamentals, like you said.
What does it mean for you to fire a client?
Yeah, usually, I mean, it's I'll compare it to breaking up with somebody. I think it's very much the same thing of like, hey, I for me internally in my head, the first thing is like I regularly look at, am I using my time in the right way? Right. So if I look across my projects, do I feel good about the work I'm doing? Do I feel good about the time I'm putting into them? Is it a fair exchange of effort versus return? Right. And usually there's a few that are questionable. And if one just stays in that questionable and then like declines to like, I hate it, I dread it, I don't want to do it anymore, I have a pretty like short-term window of like giving it a minute, give it a week, whatever, see if I can turn it around, talk to the client openly about the challenges, whatever. And if it doesn't, then I'm like, hey, this isn't working out. I'm going to get you to a place where you can hand this off to somebody else. Here's what I've done so far. Here's what I'm going to finish doing. Here's what you need to find. Like, here's what you need somebody else to do. I'm going to have you pay me for what I did. And we can cancel the contract on the rest of the work or whatever, right? And then at that point, it's kind of like, I will try to find some people who I can send your way to help you finish this up if I have somebody in my network. If not, if it's a little more hostile than that, I don't always offer that. Sometimes it's like hey, this isn't really what we talked about from a scope perspective. This isn't what we talked about from a working relationship perspective. I have some other opportunities I need to take. And we're going to cut this short. Like, here's how that's going to end. Because the contracts, as far as I know, every contract I've looked at is usually mutual in that case. Freelancers are usually worried about the client terminating it.
Yeah.
But there's nothing saying we can't either, right?
How do you feel about sending someone from your network to a client that you are stopping working with?
I'm always really open about it. So if it's a skills thing or if it's a personality thing, like if I have, let's say, an engineer who's a heads down, like I need to knock this stuff out. I'm not even really going to come up for air to touch base with the client or whatever. The client's like, and I've gotten it to a point where they can just execute. I'll be honest with them. I'll tell them like, client's driving me nuts. I spent 2 months getting all these requirements locked down and approved on their end or whatever. I don't like my day-to-day interactions with them, but this work is ready to go. If you want to knock it out, like I can make an intro, know that they're kind of a pain in the ass ahead of time, right? And they can decide if they want it or not. If the client's that bad that I wouldn't refer it to somebody else, I usually don't. But if it's a case of like, hey, I just don't have the time to handhold, or what they actually need here is somebody who, let's use a website design example again, like they have no content. Their content is terrible. They want me to rewrite the entire thing. They're missing 10 pages I think they should have. It might be a case where I say like, I'm going to step out. I'm going to connect you with some content people who are really good. I'll tell the content people they have no idea how to think about this. I'll even tell my contacts, here's the budget that I gave back to them. Here's how I think they should spend it. kind of thing. You know what I mean? And that way they have a range of like, oh yeah, I can get them X far with the budget they had for this project left over. So it's more of like I just try to set everybody up for success.
Hmm. So from the moment you understand that enough is enough and you are breaking up with client, let's recap. What is your step-by-step process of preparing and firing client?
So look at what I've already done, what value I've delivered compared to what I was contracted or promised to do, right? And kind of like look at what I've been paid or have invoiced for and what I haven't. Just get my books and numbers into place so that when I give the client the message, it's not like I'm leaving them in a, oh shit, what does that mean? Where are we at? It's usually like here's where we're at, here's what I've done, here's what you've paid, here's what you need to pay, or here's what I'm willing to finish if you pay me for it.
Mhm.
Here's what needs to happen next. And then if we're on good terms, we agree this goes well, I'm willing to make some introductions to help you finish that part of the project. And in my head, it's just literally when I've decided, I've decided. So it's just that first part. Like, what have I done? What do I need to get paid for still? And then have that conversation to say, how can I set them up for success?
Have you ever worked afterward with someone that you fired?
I have worked with clients where it's been a, hey, you're not ready for this yet. You
Mm-hmm.
really need to pin down the space in between and then come back to it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been like, I'll hand you off to somebody who does like messaging or content and come back and I'll help you finish this and launch it when it's ready. Or, yeah, your product is not real yet. Like you can't onboard users, whatever. So we can't launch it. We can't do launch marketing. We can't do go to market until you have that down or you decide which way you're going to pivot. And like 6 months later, they come back and they're like, okay, we got this down. Here's where we're at. Do you still want to work with us? Yeah, that sounds good.
Mike, I wish to have the sky is the limit, but time is the limit to our conversation. So the final question, what is your favorite food?
Cookies. I think it's cookies.
Some specific kind of cookies or just all?
Uh, there's probably like a variety that I prefer over another kind. Like you can't go wrong with homemade chocolate chip cookies. But I also like the ones with M&Ms, but not monster cookies specifically. I don't really love peanut butter in them. So, and it depends on the texture and types, right? Like I don't always love sugar cookies, but some of the ones that are like big and thick with frosting on them that are good for dipping, I really like. So it's like I'm open to any kind of cookie. I just have to kind of experience it first, but that would be my go-to for sure.
Got it. And what is the best way to connect with you?
LinkedIn is probably the best channel. I have my email and contact info up on my personal site, which is mikebal.com, and I have a newsletter, which is leadingproduct.link. But if you hit me up on LinkedIn, that's probably the best anchor.
Mike, thank you so much for sharing your experience, and it's been such a pleasure to hear and learn from you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
And thank you so much for listening. If you like the show, hit the like button and 5 stars and share it with your friend. That's it. We're done. See you in the next episode.